Thank you, Ruth. I will now start interpretation. Dan, please advance to the next slide. Good evening, everybody. My name is Pete Iango, Senior Community Engagement Specialist with Fort Collins Utilities. We're really excited to have you here today to talk about the Foothills Drainage Basin. We have two presenters and several panelists on the call that are able to answer your questions. And to start us off today, briefly, we'd like to acknowledge that we're on traditional and ancestral homelands of people native to this area. The city's pursuing a more specific land acknowledgement in partnership with our local indigenous communities into the future. But for now, I wanted to give this simple acknowledgement. A little bit of Zoom logistics. In the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you should see there's an opportunity to change your view. Feel free to play around with that, have it look in a way that you appreciate. Moving along to the bottom left-hand corner, there's an audio adjustment option. That upward-facing caret is where you can actually choose a different audio option if you're having some trouble. There's also a dial-in number that was part of your invitation to this meeting. If you're having trouble with audio, you may also dial into that audio number. Moving along the ribbon to the right, if you would like to chat a panelist, you have the opportunity to do that. The best way to use the chat is to let us know when you have a logistical issue or if you have some sort of clarifying need with the presentation. You also are going to have the opportunity to raise your hand. That's primarily an opportunity we're going to use for the second half of the meeting when we're working to make it more interactive. After the presentations are complete, we're going to have plenty of time to actually answer questions, and it's possible to have you speak up if it's easier for you to voice your question. But if you prefer, you can actually use the Q&A, which is a place to document your question, write and document your question. Either way, we've got some folks that know all about the Foothills Basin to answer your questions standing by, and we look forward to hearing anything you have. Keep in mind that tonight isn't the end all. You can see here on our slide with our agenda, there's also a link to where we're collecting feedback. June 26th is what our deadline is for feedback collection. So we have plenty of time between now and then to hopefully hear all about your experiences in the basin. Check out that webpage. It's got opportunities to put pins and maps and give comments and upload photos and connect with the project manager, etc. Okay. So we're going to do a brief introduction. You're going to hear about master planning and what goes into that from my colleague Dan in just a moment, and then we're going to move into a question and answer for the second half of this public forum. And with that, Dan, I'm going to pass this along to you so that you can kick us off with some content.
Great. Thank you, Pete. Can you guys all hear me?
Yes, you sound good.
Excellent. Thank you. So yes, my name is Dan Evans. I am the project manager for the Foothills Basin Master Plan update. We have Gerald Blackler with us today from Ingenuity. He will be talking after me and giving us the details of the basin. And then we also have a great team of panelists. Jeff Sickles with Ingenuity is also with us today, as well as Doug Groves, City Stormwater Maintenance Superintendent is here today, and Ted Bender with my group Master Planning. And then we also have the pleasure of having Ken Sampley, the Director of Stormwater Engineering, here today as well. So we got a great group of panelists. Hopefully we'll be able to answer all your questions, but as Pete said, may not be able to, have some follow-up, and that's totally fine with us. We're more than happy to come out to your home, wherever, meet with your HOA, do whatever we want to make sure your questions get answered. So give you a real, just want to thank you guys too for coming out, on this snowy night. Glad we're actually meeting virtually probably tonight and you didn't have to jump in your cars. Hopefully you're sitting at home by the fire with a nice cup of coffee or cocoa, and you can enjoy this presentation in the warmth of your own home. And so this presentation we're talking about tonight is the Foothills Basin. And it is a fairly large basin right here in the middle of the city of Fort Collins. It starts at the upstream end around Taft Hill Road, and it goes all the way down to Ziegler and drains into the Fickrett, or the Fossil Creek Inlet Ditch. And it actually has an outfall to the Poudre River. And it's well known, of course, named after the Foothills Fashion Mall, sitting right here in the middle off of College Avenue. And draining outside of the Foothills Fashion Mall is the Foothills Channel, which runs right along Bolts Middle School, Shepherdson, goes right through near Nelson Farm, down through Fort Collins High School, and then drains out towards Ziegler Road. There are 13 basins in the city of Fort Collins, and there's 4 that are FEMA regulated. That's the Federal Emergency Management Agency. But the Foothills Basin is actually a city regulated basin, and the only floodplain in it is on the Foothills Channel. So we're going to drop a lot of words tonight. If there's certain things we say that don't make sense to you, just drop that in the chat or the Q&A. We'll try to clarify some of the terminology we're using, but some of the simpler, more forward ones we're going to use tonight is 100-year flood. And that's basically the specific flow that has a 1% chance of being equaled or exceeded in any given year. And then we'll use the term conveyance. This is basically the channels and the pipes and the culverts that convey the stormwater downstream to a receiving body. So it's kind of like adding a lane on I-25. We're adding additional conveyance to the stormwater. And then another term we use is detention. And this is the temporary capture and slow release of stormwater into the conveyance system to help reduce peak flow. So
Excuse me, Dan?
Stormwater detention. Yes.
I just wanted to remind you to talk in a conversational pace for our interpreter.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Thank you very much.
Get going too fast here. So a detention is like a large, big parking lot full of water and holds and contains that water. So the Stormwater Master Planning Program, when we do a master plan update, that consists of 4 different steps. The first step is called baseline hydrology, and that's basically just converting the rainfall into runoff. Like today, you see the rainfall falling and you see it running off onto the ground. That's what Gerald will talk about here, and what they did last year was they updated that rainfall to runoff modeling for the storm events, the 100-year storm event or flood event. The next step is hydraulics, or what we call flood hazard area delineation. This is basically taking that runoff and seeing where it accumulates and how it flows over the ground and where it inundates and how wide that area is. It's called a flood plain, and mapping the flood plain. So that's the next step. The third step is the one Gerald will talk about here in a moment, but that is called the selected plan. That's what we're moving towards. And it started with identifying flooding problems within the Foothills Basin. And that's what's here to help us here tonight too, and make sure we have identified those flooding problems that you see in your neighborhoods or on the streets you drive in. And then looking at different ways to solve those problems, called the alternative analysis, and how can we remedy those flooding problems. And that after tonight's meeting, we will start moving towards a recommended plan. So what is probably the best way we can go about remedying these situations, and then that gets put into what's called the selected plan. And we present that to the water board in this fourth step of the adoption step. And we ask for recommendations from the water board to rather recommend approval of the master plan to the utilities executive director, and then it will get adopted. Is that better pace, Pete?
Yeah, you sound good. Just keep her in mind, that's all.
Sounds good. So for the Foothills Basin, we are through the hydrology phase. Ingenuity finished that last year, and Gerald will talk about that. The hydraulics, we really didn't have to update the floodplain there on the Foothills channel because it didn't really change a lot. So that was done in 2001 and it's still the same floodplain on the Foothills channel. Like I said, we're in the third step in the selective plan step that started in 2020. And we're hoping for adoption here at the end of this year. So you may ask why update your master plan? Well, this master plan was done in 2001, so it's 20 years old. So a lot of things have happened in 20 years. We have a lot more modern engineering practices. We have LiDAR terrain, digital elevation models of the basin. So we have better topographic information. We also have better hydrologic models out there than we had 20 years ago. That's easy, much more user-friendly to convert that rainfall to runoff and use. And then we have had stormwater projects in the basin in the last 20 years that we needed to get incorporated. There's been some development and redevelopment in the basin that gets incorporated. As you know, the Foothills Fashion Mall got redeveloped, and so those things got incorporated in. And then, of course, costs have changed dramatically in the last 20 years. We want to update those costs and then get with, we got with our stormwater maintenance crew and other folks to hear about problem areas. And that's why you guys are here tonight. Tell us about some problem areas. Make sure we're addressing those new problem areas in the basin. And so we got with our stormwater maintenance crew, and they have a map, which is areas of frequent flooding. So on days just like today, they have their team go out, and crews are out and about, and they hit these maintenance hotspots, they're called. And so there are 5 of these maintenance hotspots in the Foothills Basin. You probably know them well from driving around. Drake and LeMay area, right at the intersection of Drake and LeMay, is a flooding area and a hotspot that you can visit. If you live in Tanglewood area and Parkwood development, that is an area prone to flood. And then if you drive on South College, you see it all the time too in any frequent rainstorm event, maybe even some today along South College near the Glass Doctor and also near Dillenbaugh. You'll see usually flooding there, and they'll have to go address some of the issues there that Gerald will talk about. And also Meadowlark and New Mercer Canal, New Mercer Ditch is another hotspot. I could have took pictures today around the area, but this picture is from a rainstorm that occurred a couple of years ago during the summer. And this is the intersection of College and Drake. It's inundated with water during just, a afternoon rainstorm, high intensity rainstorm event. So the goals we have in the master plan are, of course, number one, identify these problem areas and then identify projects that reduce that flood risk and that protect structures from flooding and reduce street flooding. We also, another goal is to improve water quality. So you'll see when Gerald talks, a lot of our stormwater improvements and incorporate water quality as part of them as well. And then along the Foothills channel, we're looking for opportunities to add riparian habitat and also incorporate natural areas, open space, trails, and parks and recreation when we can. Then finally is step just to make sure we have guidance for new development and redevelopment in the basin. So this time I'm going to hand it over to my partner here, Gerald Blackler. He's going to go into the GIS Story Map. If you're online, you can actually go and click on it and follow along with them. And then I'm going to let Pete lead us here in a little poll.
Thanks, Dan. I did launch the poll. You are all welcome to participate. There's 3 quick questions. You can let us know what you think. Leave it open for a minute or so here. We've got 4 of 20 that have come through so far. And so we'll see if we can get several more in. That's great. Just a little bit longer. We see lots of answers coming in. People are getting through the 3 questions. Okay. We've got 15 out of 20, which is great. We're going to close the poll. So going once, last chance to get any kind of poll questions answered. Going twice. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results for you to see. Dan, welcome to interpret those results and look at them briefly and let people know what you think. It's interesting that there are several folks that have seen there's inlets that need clogging. And so that's the work that we're going to work towards. And we'll connect with you on that, hopefully, to understand that better. And there's also opportunities to share that exact type of information for all 3 of these questions on our feedback collection site.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, I'm going to stop the share. Gerald, I believe you're up.
Thank you. Can you hear me well, and can you see my screen?
Yes, we can. We're seeing your web browser, and we can hear you pretty well. Thanks, Gerald.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for attending our meeting tonight. I'm going to go through, we call these a story map, and it's a GIS application that lets us tell a story of the work that we've done. So as Dan presented, we are going to talk about the proposed selected plan to solve flooding and drainage issues within the Foothills Basin. When we started this project, there were 2 previous studies that we brought forward into our study. And that was a stormwater master plan from URS in the early 2000s. And there was a water quality plan for the watershed in 2012 that was developed by AIRS. And then in 2019, as Dan mentioned, because of changing terrain, land use, and software, we updated the master plan and the baseline hydrology, and then continued that update to determine problem areas and potential selected solutions for those problem areas. So when we updated our hydrology, there was a few steps we needed to do. One was software. Software changes frequently, as we all know. Especially in 2020, we all learned a lot of new software, maybe Zoom. And so as engineers, we also have to learn new software. And one of those updates was from a software called ModSwim to a more commonly used software that's published by the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And we call that EPA Swim. In addition to a software update, we needed to update delineations. And what that means is, where is the break in the boundary that when rainfall falls on that boundary, it drains to one location or another. So that's updating terrain, new information on elevation, and then also updating any development that may have happened. So when we did our hydrology update, we updated the software. We included the most recent information from terrain data, and then updated anything we needed to know about changes in land use. That could be development or new projects or anything that happened in the basin. And when we updated our hydrology, how much water comes down when rainfall happens, it allowed us to identify certain areas that did not meet the criteria or maybe weren't large enough to convey the amount of water that it's supposed to convey. And then we also, as Dan pointed out, talked with the maintenance area, where are some of these hot spots in the basin that have known issues of flooding? So this gives us two ways to look at the basin, one from statistics or a large flood that maybe we haven't seen yet, and then also areas that we do see flooding all the time, or maybe see flooding more frequently. And in our study, we identified 10 areas. And these 10 areas are shown on this map here on the screen. And that is Meadowlark and Blue Mesa, which is we also know those as Warren Pond, next to the Warren Farms development down here. And those needed improved outlet pipes and potentially increased storage that was identified in the early 2000s master plan. And then there were some maintenance issues on Dallenbach and College Avenue, where there's a pipe that's larger that goes to a smaller pipe and then back to a larger pipe. So we wanted to fix that too. Down Drake Avenue from College to Parkwood, there's known flooding. I think one of those pictures that Dan had up was some known flooding issues there. So we wanted to propose a plan to correct that. Down Del Clare Road, there are issues of flooding as well that were identified in the maintenance and the previous study. On Horsetooth Road near Landings Drive, there are concerns about water quality. And one of the pipes, the stormwater pipes, kind of zigzag across these roadways to get to their outlet. And our study felt that it would be good to correct those long flow paths and add water quality. The Oak Brook apartments down in the Foothill Channels area were in the floodplain, and the channel didn't have enough conveyance to push all the flow down. And then on East Swallow Road, west of South LeMay, there was ponding that backs up into existing apartments, and the existing detention pond was not functioning as well as it could. There are known flooding issues at Strachan and LeMay. And so we looked at a potential solution for those known flooding issues. And then as Dan pointed out, one of the hot spots on Tanglewood Drive was a known maintenance area that was also identified in the hydrology study and also in the conversations with the maintenance hotspots. And then last but not least was an opportunity to restore a pipe's part of the stream to a more open channel and natural segment to encourage riparian habitat and increase water quality. So as we go through each one of these 10 solutions, I'm going to try to speak slowly to be respectful to the interpreters and also be respectful of our time. So please be sure to ask any questions if I go too fast and we need to revisit one. The first is the Meadowlark at Warren Pond. The outlets don't work as well as they could or should. So the proposed improvements were to reconfigure those outlets and potentially add water quality and bring forward the recommendations from the early 2000s, which was to add more flood storage to help reduce flood risk, as this is the upper part of the basin, and reducing flood risk can be very beneficial at this location. Here around Dallenbach and South College Avenue, there was a pipe that was 42-inch that went to a smaller pipe and bigger. So that was a relatively simple proposed solution, which was to get rid of that confined pipe segment and make it a consistent size to increase the conveyance. The known flooding issues at Drake and College Avenue resulted in a proposed pipe segment, an increased conveyance pipe, and then also, if future development does occur, can we add underground storage to reduce the amount of flow, underground detention that reduces the amount of flow that eventually goes down that basin. Along Drake Avenue, there was another known flooding and known maintenance issue. And so the proposed solution was to increase conveyance by upsizing that pipe and get a discharge into Parkwood Lake. We know that many of these lakes in the foothill basins have water quality issues. So additionally, also carried forward from previous studies and included in this study are alternatives to enhance water quality. If there's future development on some of these sites, there's an alternate location where we could have an opportunity to increase water quality before it's discharged into these permanent lakes. Along Del Clare Road, again, there are known flooding issues, both in our hydrology and from interviews with the maintenance hotspots. And so there's a proposal to consider underground storage, upsize a storm sewer, but also part of the storm sewer, the existing storm sewer, goes through the backyards of the residences down Cortez Street. So that makes it hard for maintenance if we ever need to maintenance that pipe, and it makes it difficult to access that pipe on private property. So it's proposed to put that into public right-of-way, where the city of Fort Collins can more easily access that pipe if they ever need to address current issues or upsize that pipe. And additionally, there was water quality in the Foothills Mall location that was carried forward from a previous study and included in our study as an opportunity to increase water quality from these developed sites before they go downstream. On Horsetooth Road, we identified a portion of pipe that traverses the road many times, and it would be more feasible, practical, and better conveyance to drain it directly without a lot of curves and interruptions in the flow, and then also add water quality before stormwater enters Warren Lake, where there's also known water quality issues. Down at Oakbrook Apartments, the channel is no longer pipes now, and it gets to an open channel segment. And it's not large enough to convey what we call as the 100-year flood, or that flood that the FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency, would regulate to. So we are proposing to regrade that channel to protect the apartments from that flood event, and then also add other amenities like a trail and an open channel system that can help educate everyone on stormwater and how it impacts us. Here's an example of what proposed improvements could look like, where we grade and bench and change the capacity in that area to keep it off the apartments versus what an existing condition might look like as we push water through this channel. It can back up to apartments, parking lots, and poses a risk during the 100-year flood. What you're seeing in this video is what we call a hydraulic model, where we try to model things that we don't know have happened yet. Maybe a 100-year flood hasn't happened, so we use math and engineering to try to estimate the impacts if that flood did happen. Up on East Swallow Road, there is an existing detention pond that sometimes clogs and has known drainage issues. So the proposed solution was to split the water flow to alleviate some capacity issues on that pond down to a pond where we have known capacity, and then also upgrade and rework this existing pond so it functions better and adds water quality to help enhance the stormwater quality within the basin. And then we can regrade and rework the ponds that is just south of that to again add more water quality to help reduce any water quality issues as stormwater continues to drain down the basin. On Strachan and LeMay, there are, again, known flooding issues that have been identified. And our solution proposes a new pipe system to alleviate flooding at the sump in Strachan and LeMay. And then also, there's opportunities either within this parking lot or upon existing detention ponds that are already in the flow path of the system to add water quality, rework the existing ponds to add detention and reduce the amount of flow that could be coming through the system before it gets to Lake Sherwood. And going north, this was also identified in our hydrology and also identified in the maintenance hotspots is a sump up here that frequently floods and clogs. So to upgrade that capacity, fix the stormwater problem. And then there are lateral pipes also draining to the system that are made out of clay, which is typically not a material we would use and doesn't last as long as we would like. So we would upgrade those drainage systems to be what we call concrete, reinforced concrete, so that it can last longer and provide better conveyance. Here we also found an opportunity to enhance water quality, to improve the quality of stormwater as it drains through the basin. And then last but not least, within the Foothills channel, there's currently a concrete bottom and a section of the natural stream drainage area that is within a pipe system. So there's an opportunity to pull that water out of the pipe and bring a natural drainage system with natural riparian habitat back into the Foothills Basin. And then there's also an opportunity to upsize a culvert. A culvert is drainage under a roadway that isn't large enough to take the amount of water that we want it to. And so there's an opportunity to make that culvert larger and make this channel segment more natural, which will increase water quality, increase conveyance, protect residences in the area, and overall be an improvement on the storm drainage within Foothills. So that's our proposed selected plan. Again, thank you for attending this meeting. I hope I spoke clearly enough for everyone to translate, and I will pass it back to Dan at the city. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Gerald. All right, let me switch back over to my slides here. All right, can you guys see my slides? Great. So thanks, Gerald. So yeah, I'm just going to wrap up. Thank you guys for hanging in here with us. It's about 6:40, just a couple last slides here to look at. And we're going to talk about water quality issues in the basin, and Gerald talked about some of those. But whenever we have a redevelopment like happened at the Foothills Fashion Mall, we try to, well, part of our code and criteria is to incorporate green infrastructure or what's called low impact development, LID. And here's a picture of a rain garden out at the library. So anywhere we get redevelopment, part of our criteria is to incorporate this low impact development. And also we want to look for areas to improve riparian habitat, as Gerald said, along the Foothills channel. And one of those places he talked about is at Shepherdson Elementary School. Currently the channel is a concrete line channel, and it's got a footpath, just a dirt footpath alongside it. The plan would be to remove that concrete, and then there's even a pipe section to remove the pipe and the concrete and actually make it a more natural channel system. And then to connect the existing trail that comes from LeMay down to Lockwood. And then as part of that was to replace there's three culverts, three 3-foot culverts under Lockwood will be replaced by a box culvert to protect some of these homes here along the Foothills channel. So that's the end of our presentation. Thank you once again for coming. Please drop any questions you can in the Q&A. We also, as Pete said, you can go onto our city webpage and you can drop a pin on that page where your location is. We'd love to get pictures of flooding anywhere in the basin. We'd love to collect that information. Also have my email address and phone number if you'd like me to follow up with you personally or meet any of the HOAs. I know there's several HOAs in the Foothills Basin, and I've been able to meet with several of them already, but I'm willing to meet with more HOAs as well to chat with them and talk to them and answer their questions more specifically. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks, Dan. And so now's your chance. We have until 7 o'clock, potentially longer if needed, to answer some questions. And we do have some in the chat, in the question and answer right now. And one of them, Dan, is related to water quality. And it's just a general question. How do you add water quality? So maybe you could clarify that a little bit more.
Yeah. And I don't know, Howerton. So if they do want to come on and ask, I know it is a very general question, but I can start answering. So right now we're in the middle of LeMay Avenue. You probably guys all know that. If you've driven LeMay, we have a stormwater project on LeMay Avenue, and we are right at the water quality. It's called a water quality vault or device, and we're right there, and it's a large device called a snout, and it's a very large manhole. It's 6 by 6 feet, and it goes down about 12 feet underground, and it actually traps all the sediment, floatables, pop bottles, trash that float in the stormwater, and debris, and actually traps oils that are in the stormwater as well. It traps that all in that water quality vault. And so the dirty water gets trapped, sediment goes to the bottom, floatables to the top, and the clean water siphons through before it gets into Parkwood Lake. And so that's one way we can add water quality to our stormwater projects. We also, as you saw, have several water quality ponds, and that's probably more prevalent in the area and what we're suggesting. And these ponds are usually they have an area where your water runs through it and then does the same type of thing. It'll trap that sediment and pollution that's in the water as best as possible and filter it through before it goes downstream into the receiving water. So yeah, Howerton, let me know if that answers your question.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
And Ted's communicating with Howerton at the moment.
Okay.
And a few more questions came in as we're moving along.
Excellent.
Yeah. So the next one here, I'll share my screen too. The next one here is from Ted. He says, we live behind Bolts Middle School. There's quite a bit of ragwood and some undesirable species of weeds. Can that be addressed as part of habitat improvements? This will seed and flow downstream, evacuating other areas. A word I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably going to turn this maybe over to, I'm going to phone a friend here, and I'm going to turn this over to our maintenance superintendent, Doug Groves. You mind helping answer Ted's question?
Sure, Dan. I'd be happy to. We were just typing in a response for that, but that is a typical maintenance task for us to help control those invasive weed and tree species. This is something that is done generally within the growing season. I would expect we would be able to control that, but it does take a continued effort on an annual basis.
Great. Thanks, Doug.
There was also a question for some clarity around a trail component on Foothills Channel. Can you clarify this?
Yeah, so we've talked to Parks and Rec. There's no really trails in their master plan, and so we're probably going to work with maybe FC Moves on this. But we'd like to incorporate trails alongside the Foothills Channel. There's, as we said, as I showed that one, was it going to be a connection along Shepherdson? But we met with the school district last week, and they were really excited about that idea. And then maybe even incorporating some more trails along near Bolts and the Foothills Channel. So that's probably not something Stormwater in particular would probably be the front, I don't know, agency or department to lead, but I think FC Moves we'd want to work with them, and if there's a big interest in that area to do that and connect it forward, then that'd be something good to work with them. And then the crossing across LeMay, maybe do some improvements there. So the only ones we have in the master plan are that one near Shepherdson, and then also one near the Oak Brook Apartments. Probably, if we have a stormwater project in the area, adding the trail component is usually something we like to encourage and have as part of it. A lot of our channels, like Spring Creek, we have trails in Pooter right next to the channel. So something we have all over town we'd like to add to.
Thanks, Dan. We've got another question here. Can you speak briefly about how the 13 basins are jointly managed?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good broad question. So yeah, the city of Fort Collins has 13 stormwater basins, and we had master plan updates on all 13 basins done in the early 2000s. And so now we are working back way through on updating those again, since it's been around 20 years to do that. The city stormwater utility manages all those basins, or at least parts of those basins that run through the city. Some of them we manage jointly with the county, and that would be West Vine, Box Elder, and Dry Creek, where there is some county area too. I think Fossil Creek will have some joint. So other of them we manage kind of together with the county. So as you know, if you are in the city limits, you do pay a stormwater utility fee, and it's managed under the Water Engineering and Field Services Department, and stormwater engineering is part of that. So hope that answered that question. If not, ask some more.
And I'll just remind folks, you are welcome to raise your hand if that's something that you are interested in, if it's easier for you to voice a question.
Yeah.
Let's see. So many great questions coming in.
There are. Good.
So here's a question about water quality, and perhaps, Dan, you can refer what process should be taken to take steps like this. So for water quality issues, there are many people walk their dogs in open areas near Foothills Channel. There's signs posted about picking up after your dog, but could there also be trash cans added from Stover to LeMay to encourage more people to pick up after the dog and help with the fecal issue?
That's a great suggestion. And yeah, I think we do own that. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to turn this one to Doug Groves as too, if he knows of any thoughts on that question.
Yeah, or the process for making requests like that.
Yeah.
Dan, I was researching something for another question. Could you repeat, please?
Oh, okay.
Sure. Yeah, I'll repeat it. So Doug, for water quality issues, there are many people who walk dogs in the open areas near the Foothills Channel. Signs are posted about picking up after dogs, but is it possible to have trash cans added from Stover to LeMay to encourage more people to pick up after their dog?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question. And we get a lot of feedback like that. It is a constant problem. And we
You muted. Yeah.
some encouragement of passive signage to try to encourage people to pick up after themselves. The Parks Department provides a very high level of service where they've got bag dispensers and a trash can, but then that requires a service to follow that in place. And it's not something that we have typically done. And if it's done citywide, would be a considerable expense to the ratepayers. So we're trying to keep the problem in check without really increasing our levels of service that's similar to a park level. I would, if there's specific locations that we can help either have somebody collect the debris that gets there, we've also responded to those requests as well. But feel free to get in touch with those specific locations. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. How about floatables and oils or pollution removed? How are they? How are floatables and oils or pollution removed before they go downstream? That's from Mary.
Yeah. Thanks, Mary. So, I think best way is maybe to go on to some of the sites that they're called water quality devices, and there's several of them that we have in the city that we use. Like I said, the one that's going in LeMay now is called a snout. And so what it does is actually traps it in a sump in a manhole, and the floatables float to the top and the oils float to the top and the sediment goes to the bottom, and the clear water is kind of in between, and that water actually siphons up through this device. And it's probably best if you go online and Google snout, SNOUT, and it'll show you how that works. We also have other water quality devices. They're all proprietary that do similar things. They divert the water quality storm flows through them, and they trap those. A lot of them use like a vortex where they swirl the water around and that drops out the sediment, and then the floatables go over and they get caught in another chamber with kind of a screen on it, as well as another chamber that does the same kind of thing. It has a siphon effect where the oils and floatables are on the top, the clean water's below, and siphons through it. And so all that material gets trapped into these vaults, and the crews routinely go around to these devices and vac all that out and take that to the treatment plants, or I believe the treatment plants. Some of them they can, some things they can't probably. So hope that answers that question.
All right, Dan, you're on a roll. Can you discuss the budgeting process and the timing of it? What's the general impression? Are these projects high, medium, or low priority versus other basins competing for funding, and how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so we are just going, as I explained, we're just going through the master planning process. These master plans do need to get adopted and approved by our utilities executive director. And then these projects will go into our capital improvement plan prioritization. And so there's many projects, I'm afraid, in that project prioritization. I think there's upward of 50 of them. And so they get split into large capital and small capital. And so that number is somewhere in the $500,000 range. So if they land on the small capital projects, like some of these, quite a few actually in this basin are, then they will be handled in-house by our team here, myself and Ted and Beck. We design these projects, and then Doug Groves has a construction crew under him that actually build these projects. So that's the project you see on LeMay right now that's getting built, is a small capital project. Now, if they go above that $500,000, they go into that larger project pool, and those are prioritized based on number of structures they protect from flooding, street overtopping if they reduce those kind of things, and then a lot of other variables, water quality, and then some kind of partnership. If there's other agencies that want to partner with us, that elevates those in priority. So if you're interested in that, we can kind of probably walk through. There's a lot of detail to putting that together, but it's called a project CIP prioritization.
Thanks, Dan.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to read this comment from Brenda. It's a follow-up from the discussion around having waste baskets, additional waste baskets for dog waste. And she said, in regard to that, I believe there needs to be more education on why it's not okay to leave dog waste in natural areas. Some people believe it's okay because it's a natural area and it will just decompose. They don't realize the dangers of leaving dog waste. Agreed, Brenda. And, you know, we do have some educational materials, and we're happy to provide educational sessions. If that's something that you think, if you have a forum for that, a way for us to actually speak to some folks or provide that type of education, we are happy to. And we do have some materials related to that as well. So just get in touch if you want to talk about that a little bit more. We'd love to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and fecal coliform, the fecal matter is definitely a major issue in water quality. Our water quality structures do not treat for that, and so that's something that we just don't even want it in the stormwater at all, and that would be the best case scenario.
Dan, we've got a question here related to Gerald's share about potential for adding trail, and I think you shared as well. Who decides if a trail is added? How can a homeowner participate in that decision-making process?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I said, we like to incorporate it as part of our stormwater project, and so if Parks is a partner, like they usually are, and it's on their master plan, we can get them incorporated relatively easy. I'm afraid on the Foothills channel, it's not in their master plan, so they're not funding it and they wouldn't participate. So it's probably, I'm going to go on a limb and maybe some of my panelists can correct me, but I think FC Moves is probably the best partner for some things like that, especially in and around schools. I know near Shepherdson and Bolts, those would be great amenities. In around any of the schools, I think FC Moves would probably be a great partner to help with the trails.
What about feedback into this process, Dan? Is there an opportunity to use this process to potentially impact trails?
Yeah, definitely add your feedback. If you do, you'll see in the plans where we do add trails along the Foothills channel. Please let us know that you like that or not. I mean, some people like trails near their house. Some people don't like trails. So yeah, please let us know if you are for or against those and where we've identified them in the GIS Story Map and our master plan that Gerald presented. Please add that on that our city page if you think that is a great idea, or you don't, or you do see other areas maybe in the in the Foothills Basin, like Poudre School District did suggest through the near the Bolts Middle School they would like to see a trail as well. So we can bring that to the attention to other departments in the city. But yes, please add that feedback here as part of the master plan too.
Okay. And we do have several questions specific to certain areas and lakes. And Dan, I know that you want to communicate and work solutions with certain areas specifically. And so we'll make sure that we leverage this as a launching point to do that. There's also a comment here about a drainage basin north of Custer. That sounds like it's near Rigdon Parkway. That sounds like it's becoming a lake or over high flow. Doug, do you have anything that you can share about that specific case?
You bet. Looks like that came from John. We just really appreciate the extra eyes and ears that are out there that can tell us that something's going on. There's so many locations around town that do function as a stormwater detention pond. If something today is looking like a lake, that's good to know. We need to go and inspect the outlet structure to see if we've got a clog or whether it's just what is going to normally function that way. And we will get a crew out to that location. So, and again, we appreciate the extra eyes and ears and letting us know.
Yeah. And please take a picture too and drop that on the Our City page. We'd love to see pictures of those as well. That helps us kind of identify them and where they're at.
There's a pretty cool tool on the Our City page where it's easy to use too, where you drop a pin, you can make a comment, and you can upload a photo. And then we know exactly where you're talking about. And if Dan has more questions or he's not clear, he can get in touch because we have your contact information there as well. So definitely go check that out. Let's see, we've got a question here from Rich. Do any of these projects in the basin look like high priority based on history or other projects done by the utility? I know they would still need to compete for funding.
Yeah, it's a great question, Rich. We have not actually prioritized these projects yet, and that'll be part of, once we get to the conceptual plan, we'll look at those and identify the criteria if they're protecting structures and removing street overtopping, that we will actually prioritize those. So yeah, I'm sorry I can't answer that right now, but that keep you informed as we move towards a selected plan of how these will be prioritized in the basin. And then, of course, we prioritize for the basin, but then they'll go up into the overall city prioritization as well. So not only we just kind of do it as a formality for this basin, but then we actually push those up into the whole city CIP, and that gets done as a whole separate process. So.
Okay, I think we might take one more here. Dan, what tools or techniques do you have or do you use to reduce blue-green algae?
Give me the tough one, huh? Yeah, that's a stinger. Yeah, blue-green algae has came to the forefront here after the High Park fire, and so it seems like the water we're getting in our lakes has maybe got a lot of that debris from the fire, from the Poudre that comes out of the irrigation ditches. So I do not have any great ideas right now. I've heard of some new technologies out there. I'm I'm going to punt here to my panelists because that's why I brought them. I don't know if any of these guys on the panel want to try to tackle that one. Gerald or Jeff, I don't know if you guys have heard anything.
It looks like in the chat, Theodore wanted to take that one live. Or in the
Okay, Ted, you got something?
I just marked that Dan was answering that one live as I moved through the questions here, and we can always follow up with this individual via email. We're running low on time here, and I'm answering all the questions I can, but some of these more in-depth or technical questions, we're happy to follow up with you and meet in person if needed, or have a phone call or email to get you the answer you need.
Yeah, Larry, I know you're talking probably about Warren Lake. So that is, I think all the lakes, so that is a worry, is the blue-green algae. So sorry, I don't have a good answer for you on that one right there. That's a tough problem out there for, I know a lot of Sherwood, Parkwood, and a lot of the lakes around town are struggling with that issue right now.
All right, we do have Thomas who's raised his hand, and we ready? We can give him an opportunity to actually voice his question.
Sounds good.
All right, Thomas, I believe you can go ahead and speak.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, great. I live by the Nelson Farm Pond area, so we're talking east of Lockwood.
Yep.
And I was wondering about a couple clarifications for this area. You talked about the channel and enlarging underneath Lockwood, but I was looking at the website, and you were talking there about also the existing pipes under the railroad enlarging,
Mm-hmm.
and the Nelson Farm Pond itself enlarging that. I was wondering if that was area or depth as far as getting more volume there. And then the other thing about enhancing as you do projects, there's been talk back and forth about extending, or relocating the natural path that's developed through this area into a more permanent position, or, paved, not paved. There's been a lot of discussion, but I haven't heard that it's been part of any master plan. So
Yeah,
you can
great.
clarify on some of that, Dan, that'd be appreciated.
Sure, yeah. The trail, I think we're looking at ending that concrete trail right there on Lockwood and not taking it actually through Nelson Farm Pond. So that's part of the trail piece. The actual specifics on the pond, we really haven't come up with a specific grading plan on that yet, but we know it does have a need for more detention volume. And then even more probably important on that is the outlet structures. They are old and they do not function very well at all. So that's probably the more immediate need on that pond, is actually the outlet structures themselves. So Doug Groves, do you maybe have any more on that? Or?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Yeah.
We're in the process of developing communication to that specific neighborhood regarding some improvements that are planned for 21. And we will be trying to rehabilitate one of the primary outlet structures to the area. It's what takes the low flow underneath the railroad. Currently, there's a section of corrugated metal pipe that is badly deteriorated, and we're going to do an internal liner on that structure here later this year. And so initially, we just need to keep what's there in good shape and functioning, and then let the master plan develop what may be an ultimate condition. But there will be a specific communication coming to everybody in the neighborhood soon.
Great. And one more thing, kudos to you, Doug. That area has been, in the past with weeds and so forth, has trapped a lot of things and inhibited flow. And now that you've been having that mowed, the whole area, it's been looking nice, and the water, as today, it just flows right through, and it's kept it from flooding a lot by not having all the weed growth that we used to have. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
I appreciate that, Thomas. Yeah, they did. The crews did a bang up job getting in there and cleaning that area up for sure. And there's a little erosion problem downstream of Lockwood, and came in and fixed that area as well. So much better.
We have one more gentleman who wanted to speak here, and I think we're going to be wrapping up very shortly. And Dave, Dennis, I just enabled your audio.
Right. So, yeah, I'm a resident around Warren Lake, and I just wondered if you could expand a little bit your ideas on what you would do to improve and protect the quality of the water coming into the lake from that Horsetooth Landings intersection there.
Yeah, thanks, David. Sorry, we don't have a lot of detail on this. This is more kind of a conceptual master planning level right now. So it's more of just a standard kind of water quality pond is what we'd be looking at. We want to make sure we trapped any of the, trash, sediment, oils and stuff like that in a pond before it would go into the lake. And so part of our it's called an MS4 permit. It's part of the municipal. I don't even know what MS. So my panelists maybe can help me, but it's a water quality permit through the state. That is kind of what we are guided towards, is just getting the trash, debris, sediment, and oils before they go into receiving bodies. We don't have any specific, other water quality things. I know we've talked to you guys in Warren Lake and really all the other lakes. You guys are more concerned with nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen. And that really kind of isn't that's not a part of our guidelines to do it. So it'd have to be an additional thing that we work with the lake folks at any lake with, is those kind of structures to get that additional type of water quality treatment. That's not something that's really in our that part of our water quality permitting. So that answer your question, David?
Yeah, it does. I'm just wondering what the process is moving forward on discussions about what we perceive as a problem or the needs, and the planning that you might do from an engineering standpoint, of the various options that you would propose to help us with that. Not particularly the just the nutrients, but there's a whole number of issues. We're concerned about sediments. We're concerned about petrochemical pollutants, other things that are on the roadways and the parking lot there, parking lots from the mall, and and then as well, we're concerned about erosion that comes from the water going through there, increasing the sediment in our lake.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sort of issue.
Yeah, thanks for bringing those all to our attention. So I think this, as I've talked kind of before, is really a conceptual level. Right now, we want to make sure we get this in the master plan and identify it. And you guys have done a great job helping us identify that. And please add all that feedback into the Our City page or email me. I want to get all that feedback. And even I think I've emailing with Larry, want to set up a meeting just to meet with you guys specifically, the Warren Lake Homeowners Association and everyone interested in the Warren Lake area there, to make sure we gain and get all of your feedback that you guys and all of your concerns on the lake documented, so we get it in this planning document. And then when we get steps, whenever that project there at the lake and Horsetooth gets funded, then when we engage with a consultant similar to Ingenuity to really dig down in the details and how are we going to solve all these problems and work all that out. So this really now at this point, David is more of a getting your feedback, try to get that, incorporate in, make sure it's documented, and we identify those problems so that when that project actually gets funded, then we can dig into those details and remedy that issue.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure thing.
Thank you, David. Okay. I'm going to ask this one last question. I think it's a little bit of a softball. I think it's for Doug. And the question is, who cleans up the trash in the capturing ponds? And that's going to be our last question for this evening.
Yeah. That's Doug. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, you bet. So there are a few different entities that are responsible for detention pond maintenance. Some are the cities, which is my group, and some are private property. That could be a commercial development, and that could be an HOA. There are several different types, both public and privately maintained facilities. If there is a question on a certain location, we can help get that issue over to the right people.
Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Doug.
And with that, I just want to thank everybody.
Yeah.
I appreciate all these questions. We had almost 30 questions come in all across the board. Really great questions. Thanks for your interest in being engaged. And know that this isn't the last opportunity. We're always here to be communicated with directly. You see Dan's got his information right there to this specific project. And a great way for us to capture what you have to say. Broken record a little bit here, but it's the ourcity.fcgov.com/foothills webpage. It's a way for you to capture and document some of the things that you're seeing out there in a nice structured way for us so that we can consider it as we make decisions moving forward. So thank you all for your time. This is going to be, it's been recorded. It's going to be posted on that Our City page. We're also going to have a version in Spanish posted on the Our City page. And we'll post the presentation too, so you can flip through those slides. And with that, everybody have a wonderful evening.
Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this snowy evening. Have a good night.
Yeah,
Thanks,
take
everyone.
care.